All right, so we took a look at the how to bind the database. Let's try and bind the XML side. So this is the document that we're going to try and read from. And same thing, we're going to try and expose this on the web. So if folks want to access this data, we can certainly give them this this content. So I'm going to grab this this document. I'm going to copy it. Right, I'm going to put it in a courses XML file locally on my file system. So we'll put it under resources, and under resources I'm going to create a new directory. I'll call it XML, and I'll drop an XML document in there. I'll call it courses.xml, and I'll paste that content in there. Right, notice that it has courses, and inside is course. So what we're going to do is that we're going to map each instance of this into each instance of the course class. Yes, but this course root, we're going to map it to the courses class, which contains a list of course. Yes? All right, so let's do that. All right, so to do that, we're going to go back to the original course that we're using to map it to the database. So this course is not only going to be mapped to a record in the database, it's also going to be mapped to an element in an XML file. Right? So to do that, we're going to let's go to the course data model, and we're going to say that this course class is going to map to an XML element of the same name. Right? So this course class right here is going to map to each individual element over here. All right? So let's do that. So to do that, we're going to annotate this. We're going to decorate it with an XML root element. Okay, and then again, there are some idiosyncrasies. The database idiosyncrasy is that it has to have a primary key, it has to be unique, yada yada yada. XML has different idiosyncrasies. Right? One of the idiosyncrasies is that you also have to annotate each field that you want to map to the XML document, and you only annotate the setters. You only annotate the setters, not the fields. Not the getters, but the setters. Okay? Again, it's an idiosyncrasy of the library. Right? So we're going to annotate the set ID and the set title. We want to map them. The ID, we want to map it to what? We want to map it to the ID attribute. See that? Whereas so this ID, we want to map it to the attribute. Whereas the title, we want to map it to an element. Right? So to do that, we're gonna go to the setter, and this ID, we're going to map it to an XML attribute of the same name. You can override the name if you want, but here's the same name, ID. And the title, we're going to map it to an XML element. Right? Of the same name, title. Okay? All right, it's mapped. It's done. The only other thing that we need to map is also the courses, right? The courses data model, courses, because the XML document, right? The XML document is a collection of courses, right? Course instances inside of a parent courses, right? So we're going to have to map that too. So in courses, we're going to say you are a root element, and your setter here, right, this is going to be a whole bunch of elements. There's going to be a whole bunch of elements for courses. So XML element. If we leave it like that, it's going to use it's going to generate, it's going to map it, it's going to expect these all to be plural. Right? It uses the name of the field as the default name of the element. So we're going to override that. I wanted to map it to the singular. It makes more sense. Right? And so we're going to, you can override the name of the element that you want to map it to. Right? By default, it uses the default field name. So we're going to override it. You're going to say map it to the name is course, singular. Right? Could not resolve name. Element. Oh, it's using a different. Oh, it's using Sun Microsystems. They're not around anymore. It's a different one. Yeah, that one. Okay. There we go. So I bound it to that element. Very good. Excellent. So we're done there. So our data model is bound. We need to now implement the interface, right? If you remember the interface, it had functions such as read course documents, right? The overall course document, and then read an individual course element. So how do we do that? So to do that, right? Let's go and implement that interface. The interface was where? I think it was in the XML here. Right, so let's implement this. So let's create a brand new class. It'll be called course XML DAO, and it's going to implement by brand new interface. So this will be implements the iCourse XML DAO. It's complaining that we don't have any of the methods. So let's implement them all. Okay, and the way we're going to implement it, right, is using another library. So if we're talking to a database, we use the JPA library, right? We use as repositories, blah blah blah, all that. Yes. To manipulate XML documents, there's another library to do that, right? It's called the JAXB library, the Java XML binding library. So let's do that. Notice that we've already been using JAXB, right? Notice that all these libraries, bind XML binding. That's part of the JAXB library. So JPA, JAXB, there's a whole bunch of them. So let's do that. I'm going to look at my cheat sheet. First, we're gonna declare the location of the file that we want to communicate with, that we want to parse, and we're going to store it in a constant, in a local constant. So we'll declare maybe here some private static final string, right? And we'll call it the course says XML file. And the file will be, it's located under the source directory. So source main or resources XML courses XML. This is a file. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a private utility function that is going to be able to read that file and give me back a courses object, right? Just like JPA is reading records from a database, returns to me objects, same thing. Something's going to give me back a courses. So I'm going to call it read XML file, right? So to do this, we're going to use the library, the JAXB library, and it's used as follows, right? It's a little jargon here. First, we need to say what objects do you want to read or write from this XML document, right? I'll try to convert this XML document into a Java class, but you need to tell me what class do you want. This is very much like the repository, right? The repository also asks me what class do I want. Remember that? Right, and then it converted all these finders into the object instances of Java classes. Yes, the equivalent to that in JAXB is the JAXB context. It takes as argument what Java class do you want me to instantiate. Right? I'll try to convert and parse the XML document and give you back a Java instance. All right, but you need to tell me what do you want. Right, so for that we're going to use a JAXB context. It uses the factory pattern, new instance. It uses a factory pattern, right? Meaning we're not using new and then JAXB context, right? It creates the instance inside. And the new instance takes as argument, what is it that you want me to generate? So I want to generate courses.class. Okay? I believe it's complaining because it might throw exceptions. Let's see. Let's see what to say. Surrounded with a try catch. Yeah, let's do that. All right, so it's going to try and generate for me courses. Okay. Then this JAX-B context can do both. It can either write to the XML document or it can read from the XML document. Right? And in the jargon of converting Java instances into a file representation, we call that marshalling. Right? If you're going from a Java instance into a file representation, we call that to marshal a Java class. And if you're going from a file representation into a Java instance, we call that unmarshalling. Okay? It's jargon. Right? And we do this all the time. If you're going also objects that are going across a network, right? I'm sending to some other process running halfway across the world through a network. That's also marshalling. I'm sending this Java instances across the wire in bits and zeros and ones, and so I am marshalling in zeros and ones. And on the other side, I have to reconvert that into an instance object. So on the other side, they would be unmarshalling. Make sense? So let's do that. So JAX-B has its own unmarshallers. So unmarshaller. And I'm going to ask for the context. Create an unmarshaller. Right? And then once we have the unmarshaller, we can start unmarshalling the file. Okay? So let's create a file. Let's create a brand new file. So file, the XML file. File IO. We'll say new file, and we'll use the constant course XML file. Now that we have the file, we can ask for the unmarshaller to unmarshal that file, unmarshal the XML file, and we'll convert it back into an instance of courses, which I'm just going to return. Oops, no? Oh, I need to cast it probably. Is it? Okay. If it fails, I'm just going to return null. Obviously, maybe I would do some validation here since I don't want to maybe throw an exception or something. But I'm lazy today, so I'm just going to return null. So hopefully this will work. It'll come back the object perfectly, and we'll be able to read it. Excellent. So we can now write these and implement these in terms of this utility file, the utility function. We can say, well, this one is just returning whatever that guy returns. Yes? Right? Whereas the other one might be, reads the file, but then does a filter. We'll convert that into a, we'll get the courses, presumably this course, courses, right, has a list of courses as a collection, and then I can convert that into a stream. Which I can then filter, and I'll only take the course whose course ID, get ID, is equal to the course ID. Right? I'll only take that one. What else am I missing? Oh, I need to collect this, right? Collect. I remember how to do this. Something like collectors or something. Collectors dot to list or something. Yeah, that's it. I think. What are you complaining about? Incompatible type, blah, 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 blah. To list. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Dot get the first one. There we go. Okay, so I get the first one. So presumably it'll filter. I only want that course whose ID is equal to that. It creates a whole collection, a brand new collection. But I only want the one. Right? These are unique identifiers. There's only really one. So I want the first one. Okay. All right. So we have that. So now that we have that, we can basically try to export this, right? Just like we did for the for JPA, and we exposed this to HTTP. We can do the same thing for XML, right? So let's do that. We'll do the HTTP binding for this XML implementation.